11 o'clock it will start. 11.
No, your class, but this is the short paper session. You can start now. Because you're
No. Short paper session will start now from 11 to 11:30. I think the three papers are there. 11 to 11:48.
no. I
Yes.
thought we moved the timings.
KVS, we are on short paper session now.
No. Okay. So we will start. So then I introduce the. Welcome to the short paper session, research session. So we have three papers in this session. The first paper we're going to invite Pranav Gupta and Manish Gupta. Pranav is a student of DPS International School, Saket, and Manish is from IBM India. And the paper they are presenting is very relevant to this time, which is managing congregations of people by predicting likelihood of a person being infected by a contagious disease like the COVID virus. So very relevant in terms of managing congregations of people. Can we invite Pranav on stage or Manish on stage?
Yes. Pranav Gupta and Manish Gupta are on stage. Pranav, please.
We have 10 minutes for the paper presentation, followed by 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. K.V. Subramaniam. This is Manish, and we are co-located. The authors are co-located, so we'll be taking turns to present. Pranav will start the session, and thanks to CCM for giving us this opportunity to present.
Okay.
Can you hear us?
We can hear you, Manish. Pranav?
Yeah, thank you. Pranav.
Yes, hello. Good morning. I'm just presenting my screen. Are you able to?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. So today we'll be presenting our research paper, and thank you for this opportunity to present. Managing congregations of people by predicting likelihood of a person being infected by a contagious disease like the COVID virus. Now, this is the outline of our presentation: the introduction, related work, key idea and architecture, method for computing scores, simulation model and results, and the concluding remarks. Now, we are aware of the global pandemic that the world faces today, and our paper discusses an approach where a scoring mechanism can be used to predict the likelihood of a person contracted by the virus in a congregation. That information can be used for decision making, such as planning to include or exclude people, planning to segregate people and seed them, etc. The related work, proximity tracing, is closest to our work. It uses a continuous Bluetooth service to establish close range proximity between two people, and it is widely used by Arogya Setu, the Arogya Setu app. And we have gone one step further. What in our work we rank the people according to scores, even asymptomatic cases as well, to predict the likelihood of the person being infected by the virus. Another approach is contact tracing as part of related work, where it is mostly a manual process, and people who have come in contact with those who are infected with diseases like Ebola or COVID are tracked, and who they have been in contact with. Other areas of related work include biometric sensors that use AI and ML, such as Fitbit and infrared thermometers. The key idea of our research paper: analyze GPS location trajectory to estimate the likelihood of infection. Persons' trajectories are used to identify proximity events, and it is indicated by dotted circles. The proximity events are indicated by dotted circles in the picture on the right hand side. Person A and B meet at that circle to the congregation venue, while person B and C meet in the public place, and it can lead to potential transfer or infection. A score is computed based on the trajectory, and higher the score, higher the likelihood that a person is infected. The scores are also normalized and used for decision making that we discussed in the previous slides. The architecture of our the architecture. So persons have devices that can send trajectories and confirmations to the analysis server that is running on the cloud. Confirmations are basically a mode of verification that verifies if the device is with the rightful owner. The analysis server will take the trajectory and confirmations to compute normalized scores for each user based on their normalized scores for each user. And that information can be used by an event manager in a congregation location for decision making, as we discussed. These are the notations that we used in our research paper, but we will focus more on the method. In step 1, we initialize the scores and set AI, the score, to 0. In step 2, we initialize the GPS locations and interpolate those locations and add more timestamps that just makes it easier for comparison. Step 3 is where we sort the list of all timestamps in increasing order of time. Step 4 is where the computation of the scores actually take place. It comprises of two parts. In the first part, it computes the score of proximity events between two people, which is the green part. In the blue part, the score is computed for proximity events between a person and a public location. This is followed by step 5, 6, and 7, where that score is normalized. Now this is the simulation model.
So Manish, this is Manish presenting the simulation model. So the way we wanted to validate and find the efficacy of our method is through a simulation. In the simulation, we generate n persons, and n is we can set its value to whatever we want. But out of those n people, we randomly choose m of them to have the infection at the very beginning of the simulation. Simulation proceeds by computing, of course, the proximity events, but the way the simulation proceeds is it generates capital T timestamps, and then for each of these timestamps, the time T capital T subscript capital T is the congregation event, right? And for each of the other timestamps, we generate pairs of persons from the corpus of persons that we already have generated in the beginning, and each pair corresponds to a proximity event. So if in that pair one person is infected, the other person catches the infection. And for each of these time steps, we have generated random pairs, and at the final time step, which is capital T subscript capital T, we compute the accuracy of our method. The accuracy is a ratio where the denominator R is the count of the random pairs of persons constructed at the final congregation event, with at least one person being infected. So so in order to the R is really the count of those pairs where at least one person has to be infected, and the numerator is out of those pairs how many are we are able to predict with the right. I mean, the higher the score, you are able to predict the person to be infected. So that is the accuracy measure that we are using here. The experimental validation consisted of trying to find out how accuracy varies with different parameters like n that we introduced earlier, or m, the number of infected people that we randomly chose, or the number of time steps as we increase the number of time steps and while keeping other parameters constant. So what you see over here in the first graph on the left hand, figure 5, is the x-axis is n. As n increases, the accuracy, how it varies. What we see is not surprising, because in n, as we are increasing n, what is happening is that the number of proximity events really remain proportional and fixed, because we have fixed the parameter T and the maximum number of proximity events that can happen at any time step, and the number of originally infected people, which is 80 here in this case. And the accuracy actually increases because the chance of finding a pair where higher score one is actually not infected reduces in this case. And in a similar way, accuracy with respect to M, as M is increased, the number of originally infected people increases, the accuracy maintains and converges to a value in our experimentation. And as T increases, this is the only place where the number of proximity events increases. So initial with the initial high value, it actually converges to a value at around 0.75. So with different ranges of parameters, we have seen high accuracy of our approach in the simulation, and that gives us a lot of confidence that without even using any biometric parameters, just using the GPS locations and computing proximity events, we can predict if a person is really infected or not. So our concluding remarks will be the approach provides a lot of encouragement to actually enhance existing approaches to provide alarms to people about whether they are meeting people with high scores and they could be asymptomatic. The previous work doesn't talk about asymptomatic cases the way we have talked about, and this is really the benefit of our approach. And future work will involve actually implementing it, plus looking at ways in which we can preserve the privacy. Instead of sending the actual GPS location, we could think of sending ephemeral IDs between and use those to really compute the measures that we are talking about here. Yeah, that would be the end of our presentation.
Thank you, Pranav and Manish, for this very interesting talk. If there are any questions, please post them on the questions or raise your hand, and we'll invite you onto stage to ask the question. While people are thinking about it, here's a question from now. A question. Pranav and Manish, how do you model transportation events? Suppose the government wanted to figure out whether to introduce, what would be the impact of introducing bus services and metro services. How do you kind of model those events as competition events?
I think, Professor, this will be something that we should look at as part of the future work. A perfect point. And they should be modeled as, like, we have modeled public places which are static in nature. But what you're talking about here is modeling mobile places where people, come in contact with buses, as you said, and cars. That requires future work as well.
Okay, and the second question I have is, maybe I'm wrong, but I get a feeling that there's an assumption being made that people are moving around without any precautionary measures. How will we model that in? It's possible that people are protecting themselves and moving about. The impact of that, how do you model?
The impact of using precautionary measures will give people high scores, but they will not get infected, and therefore we will make wrong predictions in those cases. But in how do we detect that is either through maybe, I mean, again, those aspects can be taken care through cameras or pictures of persons state, right, whether they are using precautionary measures or not, and can help detect, normalize the scores appropriately, so that we don't make false predictions.
Thank you, Manish. We still have time for one more question. If somebody wants to ask, feel free to ask. Okay, so looks like there are no more questions, but it's very encouraging to see young minds in schools thinking about such problems and trying to address them, and being, writing it up formally into a document and submitting it to a conference. This is a very encouraging sign for this country. So thank you once again, Pranav and Manish. And
Thank
I
you.
would like to, for your presentation, I would now like to invite our second paper authors, that's Pankaj Thakur and Srinivasa KG from the National Institute of Technical Teachers Training and Research at Chandigarh. The paper is titled Intermediate Caching Technique via Fog Layer to Achieve Low Latency Video Analytics Solutions on the Cloud. May we have, I think Pankaj is...
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Excellent. I'm sharing my screen, sir.
Excellent. So Pankaj, you have 10 minutes for your presentation once you start your screen, and we'll have 5 minutes for QA after that.
Okay, sure, sir. So I hope the screen is visible now.
Yes.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Pankaj, and the title of my paper is Intermediate Caching Technique by Fog Layer to Achieve Low Latency Video Analytics Solution on Cloud. In this work, we use Squid Caching Server in the intermediate fog layer to cache the information locally for a face detection based online attendance system as a use case to validate the proposed approach. And the result shows that there are latency benefits in caching, and an optimum cache size can be achieved based on the sizes of the transmitted files. So these are the contents of my presentation. And introduction. This is a universal truth that whenever a sender sends some information to a receiver anywhere in the world through the internet, say, the sent information is not received by the receiver at the same time when it was sent by the sender. So this universal truth basically motivated, and I must say this motivated and this forced the researchers all over the world to develop some caching techniques. So Squid is basically a caching server program that uses some powerful caching primitives developed by the original developers of the HTTP protocol, as they early identified the exponential growth in the of the content in the internet. So next motivation, since the creation of ARPANET, one of the objective might be to make human life easier, better, and comfortable. From the 4 computer in internet to today, we have more connected devices than people. Cisco also predicted 29.3 billion network devices by 2023. Also, a large number of surveillance cameras have been deployed all over the world. So these connected devices are going to generate 79 zettabyte traffic, data volume, overall data volume by 2025. And there are so many applications of IoT, but there are some latency sensitive applications which needs special attention. So there are so many challenges of IoT. I'm not going to cover them in detail. Cloud and IoT are not going to solve this problem alone. So this is basically increasing the interest for the fog computing. So fog is just another cloud, you can say, near the user, non-trivial and natural extension of the cloud. It should not be expected as an offloading solution, rather than it is a continuum basically used to bridge the type, speed and latency, bandwidth, etc. This mismatch that exists between cloud and a thing. So the main thing is here, coexisting of the cloud and the fog. Basically, inside a computer system, we see an memory hierarchy in which various memory components are arranged in order to achieve some good overall efficiency by the computer. In the same way, we can arrange cloud, fog, and things in such a way that can be utilized, that can be deployed to achieve the low latency solutions. So as you can see, the cloud and things are placed reside in the on the extreme ends, and this and the fog layer is the intermediate and the perfect junction to mimic the cloud capabilities. And this is the reason it is a better approach, better platform for latency sensitive applications. And yes, fog is expected to reduce the latency. That reduced latency can be further reduced by the caching, the concept of caching. Latest trend is making the cloud more powerful, as well as the things are going to be smarter and smarter day by day. But in the cloud fog thing continuum, in the cloud fog thing continuum, the application level caching is less focused area basically here. In the cloud fog thing continuum, the application level caching and it is not covered by the Squid yet. So in order to demonstrate the work, I will follow the architecture diagram shown here and the environmental setup shown in this table. So basically, I will use my Geo5 router to give wirelessly the IP address to one of the RPI as 1.3 and my laptop as 1.2, which is also acting as a Squid proxy server here. To the Ethernet port, I have connected one wire to a switch, and to the switch, 2 IP cameras are installed here, and one Raspberry Pi single board computer is also there. So this shows the timing diagram for the 4 major activities, wherein in the first step there will be one program that will run on the Squid program, Squid server that will run and store locally here after previous. And in the next step, we have to cloud IP shown here. And in the third step, after
Hello? We have lost connection with Pankaj.
Yes, since we lost connection with Pankaj.
We'll give him 2 minutes to.
Yeah.
number of IP cameras are there, and they are going.
Yes, I do.
Pankaj, we lost you for quite some time. So
Hello, sorry.
are you back online, Pankaj?
Again, we lost him. His connection is just lost. Hello, Pankaj.
Hello.
Professor KVS, shall we wait for a couple of more minutes?
Yes, Shashi, let's just give him a moment.
Hello, sir, I'm audible.
Hello.
Yeah, Pankaj, you are audible, but quite for some time we lost your video and voice.
So, Pankaj, you can also try using the low definition video on your this one. Right bottom.
Let me try another alternate connection.
We can hear you, but we can't see you. So it's if you can share your screen.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, Pankaj, can you hear us? You're muted, please, Pankaj. Hello.
Hello. Hello, sir.
Yeah, Pankaj, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, sir.
You can come back. We can't see your screen though.
So I'm sharing, sir. Sorry, sir.
Oh. Another 5 minutes.
Okay, okay, sir. Sir, we have this proposed architecture wherein my Geo5 router will act as a DSCP server also for these two devices. One, my laptop, and second, the RPI one. Both are connected wirelessly to the Ethernet port of this laptop. I connected to a switch, and through switch, two IP cameras and another RPI2, that is single board computer or Raspberry Pi is connected, having IP address as shown here. This shows the timing diagram of the four major events that will took place. Basically, in the first step, the IP camera will capture, one of the IP camera will capture the image and store here. In the second step, those images captured by this camera will be uploaded to this EC2 instance running in the cloud, having IP address in this one. And after processing here, and the data will be published to this web server having IP address this one. So, and in the last step, this processed image from this web server is allowed to download from here and from here. And we will find that the RPI2, that is the Squid proxy client, will take lesser time to download this information. This proposed architecture is helpful in a typical scenario where a number of IP cameras are installed. They are publishing their data, and through without Squid, what is going to happen in the first step? The images will be captured and uploaded to the cloud. Upload for yellow for upload.
Pankaj, your screen sharing has stopped.
Sir,
we are not able to see your screen any longer.
Okay, sir. Sir, this screen is visible, my presentation?
Nothing. I mean, at least I am not able to see.
So let me reshare. Let me reshare, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, sir?
Yes. Now, yes.
So what I want to say is where this proposed architecture is helpful. This is helpful where a number of IP cameras are installed and they are continuously streaming their images, video to the cloud. And to in order to decrease the latency, our proposed solution is helpful. So how it is helpful? I'm going to show it without proxy. Let me so without this Squid server, what is going to happen in the first step? The images will be uploaded to the cloud continuously, all images, right? After then, some processing is done on these uploaded images. After then, whenever a request to access those processed images is received by the gateway, all the requests are forwarded to the cloud, basically. So after then, for each and every computer, the requested information is served. So this is going to take and consume a lot of bandwidth, as all of these computers are going to access the same information, basically. Same and And with Squid, what is going to happen? The first step is same, that is the IP camera will send all the images to the cloud first in the first step. In the second step, some kind of analysis like facial detection is done on the cloud. After then, when the Squid caching server received n number of requests, only the first request is sent to the cloud, and not all the requests are allowed to forward to the cloud, and only one response is received. After receiving the one response from the cloud, the Squid caching server will forward to all of the computers. So this is basically helpful for reducing the latency. So experimentation and data analysis here, basically we use ping command to find these value, RTT value, and iperf tool for this column to find the up and download bandwidth. And this shows the Fog versus cloud downloading time. And experimentation data analysis in this this graph is basically plotted on the EC2 instance, and this basically shows the 5 images. It shows the percentage of detected faces in each of the processed images captured within 1 hour in a classroom of 24 students. In the first and the fifth one, this one and this one, we allowed 24 students, and that is why it is showing 100% attendance. Whereas in case of second, third, and fourth images, we allowed 8, 16, and 16 students to sit in the classroom, and all the faces were detected. And this shows the percentage of 33 point something and 57 point something like. This shows basically this latency with and without proxy server. A plot comparing the time to download with and without proxy server is shown here. In the first iteration, here we can see we found almost the same latency from the both devices, RPI1 and RPI2. After this, as the images were cached in the Squid caching server, we found abrupt fall in latency for proxy client, which remained almost constant here until the images on the cloud are changed, as shown by the iteration number 6 here. Whereas in case of RPI 1, that is without proxy, it is almost constant. So this shows the effect of varying the Squid cache size in time to download the same file from the cloud. We found that if the size of the cache was less than or equal to the size of the file, that is 5 MB and 5 MB here, cache size is 5 MB and file to download is 5 MB also, both are equal to or less than from the cloud, then for each iteration it took almost the same time. But when the size of the cache was increased from this threshold value, like here, then only in the first iteration the file had to be downloaded from the cloud. After this, it is available in the Squid cache, and therefore for each successive iteration the download time fall abruptly. You can see here.
So we are out of time, Pankaj. So
yes, sir. Okay, sir. So this shows the working of the cache in case of Squid. And conclusion and future scope. Why to send redundant requests to fetch the same information when the correct and updated information is available on the Fog? Here we should no doubt we are going to enter the 5G and 6G scenario soon. We will be having Gbps of speeds on the network, but still we should focus more on the caching techniques, as it reduces the purchase of costly hardware and servers. And in the next level of our work, the late coming students' behavior will be predicted as they enter the class. The smart application can be developed by the developer utilizing this concept. And what we have not covered in our work is the privacy and the security aspects, and what should be the amount of the caching at each level in the cloud fog thing continuum, so as to achieve the optimum performance from a particular use case. So for the sake of live demonstration, I have to set up. I have to take 1 minute break if possible. I will show it.
So
live.
I think we have run out of time now, so we have to do one more paper in this session. So
Okay,
I will
okay.
open it out now for questions.
Okay, sir. Thanks.
While we wait for questions, I have one of my own.
Yes, sir. Please.
Pankaj, interesting presentation. So one question I have is on the fog. You're storing as a cache the videos that are coming in.
Yes, sir.
Right? Now, videos by their very nature are very large in size. So how long are you going to store it on your caching layer? When do you decide to evict something from the cache?
Sir, I could not understand. If you repeat, please.
Okay. Are you able to hear me clearly?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay. So my question is, your videos by the very nature are going to be extremely, they're long and big in size, especially if you're looking at HD videos. For all analytics, you need HD videos.
Okay, sir.
And typically, cloud storage for videos is done at a much lower rate than the one which is stored and analyzed. So, if you're going to store this, how long are you going to store it? Because there's only limit. You have assumed in this case, I don't know what's the size of your gateway where you're actually storing the cache. So, how long are you going to store the videos?
Sir, it depends upon the policy of the organization that is implementing this. Basically, like here we are. This laptop is basically for the demonstration purpose. Otherwise, I will use it a powerful server. And what I think is there must be some the organization where this kind of architecture is deployed should come with a policy ki how much time these videos and processed images are being stored for future reference.
Okay, so you want a policy on that?
Yes, sir. Privacy issues in there, yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions on the forum? None which I see so far. Okay, so despite the hiccup that we had in between, I think Pankaj has communicated his idea of advantage of using a caching solution to improve analytics performance in an edge scenario. So thank you, Pankaj, for your presentation. And let me now invite the last speaker of this session.
Thank you very much, sir.
Again, this is another interesting healthcare paper. This is from, I'd like to invite Srinivas Rao Kundeti, Dhaval Parmar, Ahmad Saneem, and Deepam Gautam. Philips Research, Philips Healthcare, and IISc Bangalore. Could you please invite them on stage?
Yes, Dhaval Parmar is on stage. Srinivas Rao Kundeti, please accept the invitation and come on stage.
Dhaval, you have 10 minutes for your presentation, and once you, we'll give you 5 minutes for question answers.
Sure, sir. Thank you. I'm sharing my screen now.
Landmark detection in 3D medical images using reinforcement learning. That's the topic. Over to you, Dhaval.
Yes, sir. I'm sharing my screen. Is it visible? My screen is visible?
Not yet. I think it's showing your link as
okay.
a little slow.
Okay. It was fine until now, actually.
The share screen, not yet. It is the third option after camera, mic, and share screen.
There's an upward arrow there. You see that? Bottom?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir. I'm doing the same. Let me share it again. To stop sharing.
Are you using a Mac by any chance, Dhaval?
No, I'm using Windows. No, I don't know why. From my side, it's that button is not working now. The share screen, it's not functioning properly. Okay, now it is. Okay. Is it
Yes,
visible
it's
now?
coming.
Yes,
Yes, we have it up.
It's visible.
yes,
Huh?
Dhaval, it is.
Okay, so can I
You
start?
can go on. You can go on slideshow mode, and we can start.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, yes.
I'm on slide. Yeah. So good morning, everyone. I'm going to present our work for the landmark detection in 3D medical images using the reinforcement learning. Um, so here is the outline. I will start with the introduction of the authors. Then I will try to formulate the problem and the motivation. Then I will describe different approaches we are considering for the solutions. Then I will describe about the different experimental settings. Then I will discuss the results, and then I can take questions. Yeah. So starting with authors, I am Dhawal Parmar from the Indian Institute of Science, doing my master's in artificial intelligence. I'm really excited about how the various machine learning techniques like the deep learning and the reinforcement learning can help in the healthcare domain. So for this paper, I worked with Mr. Srinivas Rao and Deepam Gautam from the Philips Research and Ahmed Sanin from the IISc. So let's start with the introduction and the problem statement. Generally, the medical images are includes the X-ray, CT scans, and MRI images. Those are quite different from the natural images. Generally, we deals with 2D and 3D grayscale images. It comes with its own challenges, like we don't have proper defined edges and many other things. So it's required the specific attention for that. Talking about the landmarks are defined at a points and the curves with the specific features um, with the specific features that are commonly found in every individual with the corresponding locations and topology. The landmark detection is very important for the medical image analysis. It is used in various applications like segmentation or registration and many other. The development in the machine learning has shown quite promising results for the landmark detection. The manual annotation is tedious and also may lead to the error. So here we are comparing the deep learning and the reinforcement learning approaches using the cloud computing. The cloud computing is quite important nowadays for the extensive training and the collaborative research. So we are using the cloud computing for comparing our approaches. Okay. Um, here describing about the data set, we are using the free surfer brain MRI images from the T1 weighted sessions of the OASIS dataset. Here we are using 166 images. Those are randomly sampled from the OASIS dataset. We are considering the 5 landmarks that are, those are corresponding to the corpus callosum of the brain. The corpus callosum is shown as a pink part in the image. Here is the list of all the landmarks. Let me just. Okay, so here is the list of all the 5 landmarks that we are considering, and here is the respective location of those landmarks in the MRI image. The OASIS dataset does not have the ground truth. Okay, so talking about so now I will go now to talk about different approaches we are using. So here we are comparing deep learning and reinforcement learning. So yeah, so basically the deep learning is part of a broader family of the machine learning method based on the artificial neural network with representation learning. While the reinforcement learning is defined as a Markov decision process where the agent is learning optimal policy to maximize the future reward. Here, agent is learning the optimal path to reach to the landmark location. So here the environment is the 3D image that can be considered as this cube, and the state is defined as the 3D region of interest around the current location shown by the solid cube. Here, 6 actions are corresponding to moving in any of the 3 coordinate direction, either in positive or negative side. The reward function is defined as shown, and that emphasizes the agents to take the bigger step towards the landmark locations. Now defining now I will going to talk about different architecture we are considering. So for the deep learning, we are using the flatnet network recently published in 2020. We have modified the network for 3D images layer. In the first and second layers, different dilation rates are used consecutively to deal with different morphologies. Here we are concatenating all the results output and passing it through the convolution layers to get the final heat map output. For the reinforcement learning, we are using the Q-learning algorithms with DQN and its variants. Here the equation represents the loss function for the vanilla DQN to learn the weights of the network using the stochastic gradient descent. Here S and S prime represents the state for the current in the next state. R represents the reward, A represents the action, gamma represents the discounted factor, W bar and W represents the weight corresponding to the target network and the current network. Here is the architecture of the network we are using. So here the 4 convolution layers are followed by 3 fully connected layer. Here input is the image from the region of interest, and the output is Q value corresponding to all the 6 actions. Okay. Here are so these are those were the fundamental approaches we are considering. We have also experimented or explored the variants of DQN. We are using double DQN and dueling DQN also. In the double DQN, we can take the actions from the current network to overcome the issue of overestimation related to the vanilla DQN. In the dueling DQN, we can divide the fully connected network into the value function and the advantage function. The value function captures the information corresponding to the importance of the state, while the advantage function captures the information regarding the importance of the action corresponding to particular. So we have also experimented with the on policy SARSA algorithm. Here the action corresponding to the next state is also stored into the replay buffer and utilized. The RL architecture described up till now are able to learn the single landmark at a time, and generally the multiple landmark corresponding to the particular anatomy are of the interest. So we are using modified network as is shown in the figure. Here the convolution layer weights are set between all the agents that is responsible for the information sharing between the agents, and this is helpful because the landmark locations are related to each other in the human anatomy. The convolution layers are followed by the individual fully connected network that is corresponding to the each agents, and these layers are responsible to learn the landmarks specified features. So these are all the architecture and approaches we have considered. Now I will go on to talk about different experimental settings. So we are training both the DL and RL approaches using the Google Colab. All the details are shown in like in the reinforcement learning. We are using multi-scale settings for the faster convergence and with to get the better accuracy. For storing the transition, we are using the replay buffer, and we are randomly sampling from the replay buffer to train our model. We are using the epsilon greedy approach for the better exploration. For the deep learning, we are using threefold cross-validation. Due to the memory constraint, for the deep learning, we are scaling down our image. We are processing those images, and the output is again scaled up for the final comparison. Okay, so here the picture shows the movement of all the 5 agents for different scale. Here the red dot represents the ground truth and the blue dot represents the agent. The yellow rectangle is representing the region of interest around the agent. We are starting with the scale 3. Is shown in the first row, and as the agent reaches to the landmark, it reduces to 1 as shown in the last row. For the scale 3, we are skipping 2 pixels in the image in between. So the rectangle shown in the row 1 is big, and then on reducing. Final step, final for the expert. Now I will gonna talk about the so here the table shows the complete learning and vanilla clear from the table that RL is outperforming the DL approach is nearly 3 to 4 times more compared to the RL approaches. Here we get the error for the multi-agent is a bit high compared to the single agent setting. Each agent is trying to learn their respective landmark. Okay, so here is the detailed comparison which is represented with the bold letters. Here we can see that the outline and the offline algorithms are giving comparable results. According to the mean error, the double DQN is performing well. And so this was about the results. Now I will conclude my presentation with the future expectation. So we can clearly see that, and we can say that the reinforcement learning approaches are outperforming the deep learning approach for specifically for the landmark detection task. As we have shown, we can learn the multiple landmarks simultaneously by information sharing between the agents. Considering the future, we also want to add more number of landmarks and also the different anatomy of the human body. We also want to explore the other algorithms. So here are the references we have used. And yeah, so now we can take questions.
So, okay, so the time for a couple of questions is already way beyond time. So, are there any questions from the audience? Okay, let me just ask you a quick question, Dhaval.
Yes.
So, as you're doing this simultaneous detection of various landmarks,
Right.
Right. So how many cases where you're actually not able to detect the landmarks simultaneously correctly because of this algorithm? The double, you said the DQN, right?
Yes. With the with considerable error, we are able to means you can see here. So The algorithm is working fine with multi-agent threading also for all the algorithm. So that is not means error is bit high when you compared to when you are considering only single agent at a time. But the error is not that much high. Here you can see that error for the single agent is, if you are considering MA, it's 1.66, while for the multi-agent it is 2.12. 2.12.
How do I interpret an error 1.66? What does it mean?
Yeah, so
does it mean only 1.66% of the times that it detects it incorrect?
No, it is the distance error. As I said, it is a distance error in millimeter. That is the error in between the actual ground truth landmark and the landmark predicted by the agent. So that is the distance between those.
So significantly, 1.66 mm in the brain is, I thought, quite large, right? No, I mean, trying to understand.
Yeah, so this is.
Yes, sir. I think we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, sir. We can hear you.
Yes, sir. So this is an intermediate application. So in brain, though it is we are trying to achieve less than 1 mm. That's what we will be at the end of the day achieving. The application is using these landmarks. We are trying to plan a particular anatomy. So if you see the corpus callosum, the size of the object is larger, not very tiny, and we are trying to automatically plan that area. So if you can go to the that slide, second slide, data. So the idea is this application is intermediate application, and we will use this for planning another box. So I think if we target less than 1 mm, we'll be good as per our analysis.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for the explanation. Are there any other questions on the forum? So looks like there are no other questions. So thank you, sir, for your paper on landmark detection. So with this, we come to the end of the morning, the short paper session, and also the entire morning session. So I'd like to welcome you all, as we say, bye on the morning session. The evening session starts at 5:30 p.m. and we have a very interesting keynote on sustainable development by Dr. Gopal Pingali, and followed by a short paper session again, and conclude we have a session on a tutorial session on quantum computing. I'm really excited to looking forward for the evening session. So please, we'll meet again in the evening, and looking forward to see you all in the evening. Thank you so much, and thank you, Shashi, for coordinating this entire session.
Thank you, Dr. K. Subramaniam. Thank you all for participating in morning sessions. See you at the evening session. I'll now end this session.
Yeah, thanks.